Have you ever noticed that you're not exactly the same person around everyone? With some people, you're loud, funny, confident. You know exactly what to say. But put you in a different room, and something changes. You become quieter, more careful. Maybe you start overthinking every word before you say it. Around one person, you're completely yourself. Around another, it feels like you're constantly trying to figure out who you're supposed to be. And maybe you don't even notice it happening. You laugh a little louder. You change your opinions. You pretend to like things you don't really care about. You agree with something, even though deep down, you don't. And after years of doing this, a strange question can start following you. If I'm a different person around everyone, who am I when nobody is around? Now, let's be clear. Being different around different people doesn't automatically mean you're fake. You don't talk to your boss the same way you talk to your best friend. You're probably not the same at a family dinner as you are on a night out. Different people bring out different sides of you. That's normal. The problem starts when you're not simply adjusting your behavior. You're adjusting yourself when you stop asking, "What do I actually think?" and start asking, "What do they want me to think?" When you stop saying what you really want, because you're already calculating how people might react. When being accepted becomes more important than being honest. And slowly, without realizing it, you become whoever the room needs you to be. Maybe you're really good at reading people. You can tell when someone is annoyed. Even when they say they're fine, you notice small changes in their tone, their facial expressions, their body language. You can walk into a room and immediately sense the mood. And you've probably been told that's a good thing. Maybe it is. But sometimes, being extremely good at reading the room comes with a hidden cost. Because while you're constantly paying attention to everyone else, you might stop paying attention to yourself. You know when everyone else is uncomfortable, but do you know when you are? You know what will make everyone else happy, but do you know what you actually want? And sometimes, this ability to adapt didn't start because you were naturally flexible. Sometimes, you learned it. Maybe, at some point in your life, being yourself didn't always feel safe. Maybe being loud got you criticized, so you became quieter. Maybe expressing anger created conflict, so you learned to say, "It's okay," even when it wasn't. Maybe disappointing someone made you feel guilty, so you became the person who always said yes. Or maybe you grew up around unpredictable people, people whose moods could change without warning, so you learned to watch, to listen, to predict, to adjust. And over time, you got really good at it. Not because you wanted to lose yourself, but because adapting felt safer than rejection, safer than conflict, safer than being the reason someone was upset. And here's the problem. Your brain remembers what once kept you safe, even when you're no longer in that situation. So you keep adjusting, you keep agreeing, you keep becoming smaller, not because someone is forcing you to, but because a part of you still believes, if I am exactly who I am, people might not want me. The strange thing is, you don't lose yourself in one dramatic moment. It happens quietly. Someone asks, "Where do you want to eat?" And you say, "Anywhere is fine." Someone asks what movie you want to watch. "Whatever you want." Someone asks for your opinion. And before answering, you wait to hear what everyone else thinks. Then you adjust yours. A friend asks you for help. You're exhausted. You don't want to do it, but you say yes anyway. Because saying no feels worse than being tired, and each one of these moments seems small, but they add up. Because every time you ignore your own preference to avoid disappointing someone, you're sending yourself the same message, "What I want can wait," and eventually, you stop asking what you want altogether. This is where things start becoming confusing. You might have friends, you might be surrounded by people, you might even be the person everyone comes to, but still, something feels strangely empty, because people may know you. But do they know you? Or do they know the version of you that you created for them? The funny version, The quiet version, the strong version, the easygoing version, the version that never says no, the version that always understands. And then one day, maybe someone asks you a simple question. What do you actually want? And for some reason, you don't have an answer. Not because you don't care, but because you've spent so much time adjusting to everyone else's expectations that you've lost contact with your own. And that's when you might realize something uncomfortable. Maybe you haven't been living as yourself. Maybe you've been managing everyone else's version of you. But here's something important. The goal isn't to become exactly the same person everywhere. You don't have to act identical with everyone to be authentic. You can be quiet around one person and loud around another, serious at work, completely ridiculous with your closest friends. Different environments naturally bring out different parts of you. That's not fake. The difference is this. Are you changing because different parts of you naturally come out? Or are you changing because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't? That's the question. Because there's a huge difference between adapting your behavior and abandoning yourself. You can change your tone without changing your values. You can be polite without pretending to agree. You can be kind without saying yes to everything. You can adapt without disappearing. This is why telling someone to just be yourself isn't very helpful. Because what if being yourself has felt dangerous for years? What if you learned that conflict means rejection? That saying no makes you selfish? That disappointing people means losing them? Then every time you try to set a boundary, your body might react like you're doing something wrong. Even when your mind knows you're not, you say no and immediately feel guilty. You disagree and spend the next 3 hours wondering if they hate you. You express what you actually want and then feel the urge to take it back, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you're doing something unfamiliar. You're choosing yourself, and part of you isn't used to it yet. So, how do you stop becoming whoever everyone else wants you to be? You don't suddenly wake up fearless, you don't become confident overnight, and you definitely don't need to become rude, cold, or selfish. You start smaller. The next time someone asks you what you want, don't immediately say, "I don't mind." Stop for a second. Actually ask yourself, what do I want? Maybe you don't know at first. That's okay. You probably spent years ignoring the answer. It might take time to hear it again. The next time you disagree with someone, you don't have to start an argument. Just don't pretend you agree. The next time someone asks you for something and you genuinely can't do it, try saying, "I can't this time," and then wait. This is the hard part. Wait for the discomfort, the guilt, the fear that you've disappointed someone. And notice something. The feeling of guilt doesn't always mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it just means you're doing something different. And yes, something else might happen. When you stop being whoever everyone wants you to be, some people may notice. They might say, "You've changed." And maybe you have. But sometimes, "You've changed" really means you're no longer behaving in the way I was comfortable with. Because people get used to the version of you that makes life easy for them. The version that always says yes, always understands, never complains, never asks for anything. And when that version starts having opinions, preferences, boundaries, it can make people uncomfortable. But here's something you need to remember. Someone being uncomfortable with your boundary doesn't automatically mean your boundary is wrong. Maybe you've spent years becoming whoever you needed to be. At home, at work, with friends, in relationships. You became quieter when silence felt safer. You became funny when making people laugh earned acceptance. You became agreeable when disagreement felt dangerous. And maybe you've become so good at adapting that you no longer know where the performance ends and where you begin. But maybe finding yourself isn't about discovering some completely new person. Maybe you were never lost. Maybe your real preferences are still there. Your opinions are still there. Your boundaries are still there. Your voice is still there. It's just been buried underneath years of asking one question: who do they want me to be? So maybe the next time you walk into a room, before you change yourself to fit it, ask a different question. Not, who do I need to be for them? But, who am I when I'm not trying to earn anyone's approval? And don't worry if you don't know the answer yet. Just asking the question might be the first time you finally started listening to yourself.